The 20th anniversary documentary for Half-Life 2 not only covers the base game, but it also goes over some information on the episodes, including Episode 3. Episode 3's development led to numerous pieces of concept art being created. A new Combine train is featured in several of these pieces. This train is very different from the Razor trains seen in the rest of Half-Life 2 in the episodes. It appears to have several ducted fans. The rail system is new and not anything like a traditional train, including its tunnels being perfectly shaped to the locomotive. It appears several scenes were also thought up for this train. One of them is an action piece, with it being in a nice tunnel. Another piece shows it going over water, with Combine technology dotted around. The final image shows its true scale in comparison to a human freighter, with this train having crashed at some point. This crash likely took place in the past, as the gunship appears far more interested in the freighter in the water. Half-Life 2's 20th anniversary documentary briefly at the end discusses the development of the episodes, and even features new concept art. This includes art of Half-Life 2 Episode 3. In some of this art are hints towards some of the plot. The Borealis was to be an important plot point, as expected. The Combine would have already been at the vessel and begun securing it. They would build their tech in and around the ship. One Borealis piece was made in 2005, a year before Episode 1's release, showing how important the Borealis was a plot point to Episode 3 and the episodes generally. Another plot point was the helicopter that Gordon and Alex were to take was to crash. One piece of art seems to have been developed before it was decided what type of helicopter was to be in Episode 2. The crash was originally going to be in the middle of the snow and ice. And as seen in a concept piece revealed in the final hours of Half-Life Alyx, they might have crash-landed right in front of a Combine installation. One final concept piece from the anniversary documentary shows that the Resistance would have had a presence in the Arctic, controlling a broken submarine. It seems this was to be visited with other survivors in the region. In Half-Life 2's 20th anniversary documentary, Valve briefly discusses the development of the episodes at the end, including Episode 3, with concept art. Among this art are various pieces related to the Combine, giving us a good look as to what we might have expected to see from them. From these two pieces, we would have seen a vast base of operations from them, this base rivaling the internal scale of the Citadel. Interestingly, these base pieces also use in-game Combine wall assets to help establish the style. In the reverse direction, the Combine would have much smaller structures out in the ice floes. This structure stands alone. Here's the scale of it with an actual person. Their technology would have blended into and connected with the environment in a way not seen before. And to some degree, this technology was super advanced, and would have given us an insight into their automated or robotic sides. At least based on these floating entities. Populating these structures would have been their units, such as the Advisor. As seen in this art from the final hours of Half-Life Alyx, the Advisor looks like it would have played an important role, possibly even fighting the player. Back in the 20th anniversary art, we see that the gunship would return. Their cousin, the dropship, would have also returned to a degree. And finally, the Hunter too. Throughout Half-Life Alyx, you can come across a newspaper named The Terminal. What is on the paper is legible. It goes on to describe numerous events in the immediate aftermath of the 7-Hour War. One section talks about the shuttering of global stock trading. The Euroext in Paris, London Stock Exchange, Shanghai Stock Exchange, Hong Kong Stock Exchange, and both the New York Stock Exchange and the NASDAQ report being closed. The Securities and Exchange Commission in the US even declares that trading will not return for the foreseeable future. The Tokyo Stock Exchange is also brought up, but it's not known what happened to it. The paper mentions that following the 7-Hour War, all communication out of Japan ceased, leaving the specific fate of the country unknown. And as seen on Alyx's globe in her hideout, over time most of the rest of the world joins Japan in becoming murky unknowns. The face used for Dr. Kleiner in Half-Life 2 has a bit of a story to it. Originally, he looked different, with his original model being seen at SIGGRAPH 2000. We know this is him thanks to the 2004 version of the Raising the Bar book. Sometime near the first half of 2002, Valve were working on Dr. Kleiner and ended up recasting his face. Dr. Kleiner's recasting had multiple layers to it. Valve were wanting to build some visual connections to some of the NPCs in Half-Life 1.
Archetypes. We wanted to create narrative links between Half-Life 1 and Half-Life 2 through our characters. Our idea was to design individuals who felt like representations of Half-Life 1's archetypes, so that players might find them familiar, almost as though they'd met them in Half-Life 1 at some point that they couldn't quite remember. We based Dr. Kleiner on the scientist model we felt was the most iconic, and his personality was largely shaped by Hal Robbins, whose voice and performances had defined the Half-Life 1 scientists.
This design choice inadvertently led them to a man named Ted Court.
One day, when we were in the thick of trying to figure out this character, Dr. Kleiner's face came into focus, as we happened to share an elevator with an accountant from an office on another floor of our building. And looking at him, it was clear that this is Dr. Kleiner's face. Luckily, he was receptive when we asked if we could photograph him for a video game character.
Fear, Gordon.
So we're in the elevator coming back from Starbucks to get morning coffee, and we saw this face, and it's like, that's him! That's the scientist! And he was an accountant in the firm below ours in Kirkland.
Yeah, nothing kind of blows your mind when you've been working all day on this character in your game, and all of a sudden you get on the elevator and you're like, holy crap, it's him.
I once ran into him at the airport.
As well, some Valve team members would occasionally see him at Starbucks, and those who didn't know where they got Dr. Kleiner's face from would get confused as to why Mr. Court was so familiar. at E3 2002, Dr. Kleiner would reappear as Ted Kort, and would remain this way all the way to Episode 2. The Source 2 version of Dr. Kleiner was planned for Half-Life Alyx, but he was eventually cut. This new model would not have used Ted Kort's face. On the Halo 3 map Longshore, there are aircraft carriers beyond the playable space. On the decks of these carriers are Pelicans, and F-99 Wombat drones, the ones seen from ODST. One of these drones is how you start Uplift Reserve from Mombasa streets. And others can be seen throughout Uplift Reserve itself.
Good hunting, boys. I'm keeping my boots on the ground.
If you find your way out of Longshore in some form, you can see that the flight deck of the ship seems to be an old bit of concept art for the deck's planning. Although not immediately noticeable, even with the ship that faces the map head-on, the carrier actually has a complete through deck. In Counter-Strike 2, in the T-spawn of Office, you can find a radio. Although incredibly difficult to hear during gameplay, this radio actually has a broadcast that lets you get a bit more story to the map. You can find this same broadcast in CSGO.
We gotta move, guys!
We have just received word of an ongoing hostage situation taking place in an office in the downtown area.
And in Counter-Strike Source.
Any involvement in the incident? We have just received word of an ongoing hostage situation taking place in an office in the downtown area.
Here's the original audio from CSS.
Denied any involvement in the incident. We have just received word of an ongoing hostage situation taking place in an office in the downtown area. A group of armed men took control of the office at gunpoint earlier today. Most of the employees escaped relatively unharmed during the initial chaos of the takeover, but 4 people are unaccounted for and have been verified to be hostages. The reason behind this terrorist action remains a mystery. With no end to the conflict in sight, authorization has been given for a SWAT team to enter the office and attempt a daring hostage rescue. In other news, the President has been today.
The versions heard in CS2 and CSGO actually cut out the reference to the SWAT team.
With no end to the conflict in sight, authorization has been given to enter the office and attempt a daring hostage rescue.
In Portal 1, you can find radios in a number of places that play a Muzak version of Still Alive. Thanks to the Steam release of the Portal 2 soundtrack, you can listen to it without the radio static. The Passing and the Sacrifice are both set in the city of Rayford, Georgia. Rayford is along the shores of a river, with a bridge being the central focal point of both campaigns. The first level of The Passing is actually based on a real place. River Street in Savannah, Georgia, as seen here on Google Street View. In fact, it's so closely based on River Street that this very large, unmarked, modern building beyond the survivors' playable space can be identified as the Savannah Hyatt Regency Hotel. Even the alleyway behind River Street's buildings is accurately represented in-game. Though the park with the Witch Bride is made up for Left 4 Dead 2. Here's what River Street looked like in 2007, 2 years before Left 4 Dead 2's release. As seen here, River Street's buildings were under renovation in 2007. These works likely continued long enough to inspire some of the under construction areas in The Passing's first chapter. Despite these similarities, there's one notable difference: the bridge. In reality, there is no connection to the other side of the river here. However, Rayford doesn't appear to be a Savannah neighborhood. A line from Coach in The Passing suggests that a hefty travel time took place between the campaign and the campaign actually set in Savannah, dead center.
You've been killing zombies for the better part of 2 days, boy. You can talk to a girl.
On top of this, Dark Carnival is in Georgia too, as it begins on the I-16. This suggests that crossing the bridge in Rayford does not lead to South Carolina like crossing the Savannah River does in real life, as the I-16 is located entirely in Georgia. On the Palo map, Thunder Mountain, in the blue spawn room is a window overlooking a warehouse with several mercenaries looking at a map. These mercs include Spy, Pyro, Soldier, Heavy, and Sniper. If you watch them for long enough, they will occasionally emote. Every once in a while, all of them will do the Thriller emote in unison. Thunder Mountain also has a CTF variant. In this version, not only does Blue get these mercs back, but Red also gets their own.